Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a special guest to choose a story, to choose their favourite thing for each episode, then I have to watch and guess what that favourite thing is.
Hello, I'm Ian McLachlan, and I have been a fan of Doctor Who since the 30th of November 1963, when I saw the repeat of An Unearthly Child. I was interested in joining the Doctor Who fandom, and I was in the Doctor Who fan club when Keith Miller ran it, and then I joined DWAS, and for a couple of years I was in charge of the writers' pool in DWAS, and I did interviews with various people, and I interviewed people via letters for the TARDIS magazine. I was delighted to be asked to contribute to the New Look TARDIS that the DWAS are doing, and I have written for a couple of the TARDIS yearbooks as well, or the Doctor Who Appreciation Society yearbooks. Now, the story I have chosen is the Dalek Masterplan. I chose that because it was partly written by my favourite Doctor Who writer, Terry Nation, and I particularly liked his serial, Keys of Marnus, which is my all-time favourite Doctor Who story, and The Chase, and Dalek Masterplan. Now, all these three serials have in common is they don't stay in the same place in time and space. They move to different locations, and I've always enjoyed stories that have done just that. So, we come to Dalek Masterplan, and we could go through the episodes, and I'll tell you what I particularly like about them.
Well, welcome everybody. It's been 3 months, not for me or for you actually, because we do this on more than a weekly basis, but it still feels like it's been a bit of an epic. So I can only imagine what it was like for the kids at home, and I guess that's where the sort of globe trotting and planet trotting and time trotting comes into it, because you know, those bits where I felt it's slightly dipped for me because I've wanted the story to get back to the main story. Actually, to maintain a viewer's interest over 3 months, you need a change of locale and personnel, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, I'm aware that some of my criticisms, what's the wrong word, but some of my laments about aspects of this, which have only been in comparison to the wonderful bits about it that I adore, you know, are practical necessities, because you're telling a story, the same story with the same leads over 3 months. I mean, you know, what a trek through time and space, and it's about to come to the end with the destruction of time, the end of the longest running Doctor Who story. You know, when I first discovered Doctor Who and all of its history, this was the big one, and it wasn't eclipsed until Trial of a Time Lord, but I'd been a fan for quite a while then, and even then that was broken up into different segments. But still, however you count it, this still counts as something pretty huge. And let's see what happens in the end as we go 3, 2, 1, and play. I must actually I must read something from one of the subscribers to Patreon, which I don't plug often during the body of this, because I don't like to you know, I don't want to fill this with plugs, but the Patreon is a thing, and people, when these are released, can comment on them on the old Patreon. And as I'm recording this, I've already released for the patrons the first couple of episodes. I know, almost live. And Frank Shales, hello Frank, who replies to quite a few things. He's very, very involved, which is great. says, because I was talking about how the names change and even the spelling of Mavic Chen, but particularly things like Lisanne and Roald and Brett Vian, came from being Lisa and Ronald and Brett Walton. That's some superb Dalek action there in the reconstruction. Actual moving Daleks and the Time Destructor and a moving door. I am loving this loose cannon reconstruction, which is making this come alive much more than one could reasonably expect. But Frank says, from contemporary correspondence about the futurization of the character names as reproduced in the Harris Stammers Walker First Doctor Handbook, an excellent book to invoke, we can clearly thank Campfield's persistence for the success of Blake 7, which, lest we forget, was written by Terry Nation. And he says, can you imagine heroes and villains like Roger Blake, Derek Tarrant, Jenny Stannis, and Charles Travis? Yeah, Roger Blake and Derek Tarrant. But that's pretty much what they would have been called had somebody on a Terry Nation production, namely the brilliant director of this, Douglas Camfield, not gone, do you really want to call your characters Ronald and Lisa? Now, I'm not seriously suggesting one thing led to another, but actually, why not? But I like Frank's suggestion. That tickled me, and that's one of the things you can do if you are a patron. But as I say, I'll save the plugs till afterwards. This is poor old Mavic Chen. I've never got to the bottom of him because one of the first things we read about this was that Kevin Stoney won Villain of the Year or something in the Daily Mail, but I'm not sure we've ever found definitive proof of what it was he did win. And I've been and better people than I have been through newspaper archives. He obviously won something or was cited somewhere, but it's not as easy to find as you would think from the alacrity with which it was reported when Doctor Who's history first started to be written. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's one of those things that you go, oh yeah, and he did this, and then you look into it and go, actually, did he? We can't quite find that. I have to say, I don't tend to spend my time swimming in the sewage of the Daily Mail's past, and I mean, frankly, he's an evil, unpleasant, duplicitous megalomaniac. Not sure he'd count as a villain in the worldview of the Daily Mail, but there we go. Sorry, I try not. It's a cheap shot, that, but it is an organ that saddens me. The Daily Mail. But let's not talk about. Anyway, you can make your own jokes. He's poor old Mavic Chen is clinging to the precipice by his fingertips, and I kind of love what they do here. We've got the real the little notes there that said on the screen, the Dalek communicates silently with central control, and I think they do a bit of whispering here, don't they? Where so what they're telling him that. Yeah, you're to escort the prisoners, but I'm sure they whisper at each other now. And again, they're toying with him. It's brilliant because it makes no difference. They have all the time in the world. They don't need to wipe him out. They don't need to bother killing him now. Do they whisper now? But we are still to assist. I love it when the Daleks are cunning. And it's a thing that the Daleks I was brought up with didn't kind of do, and it's one of the great joys of discovering 60s sort of Daleks was that when you sort of thought, well, they'd just be like the Daleks that I know. The Daleks don't ever change, do they? And then you discover these sneaky ones here, and they're brilliant in these last two episodes. And then the David Whittaker Daleks, the I am your servant, and the ones that scream when they die, all sorts of things that didn't really happen to 70s or 80s Daleks. And it just shows the joy of discovering things and depth depths and nuances and little bits of texture to things that you think you know everything about, because the Daleks are pretty on the nose. They do what they do. But actually, no. And the gun is covering him. And I love this. It's so... You almost feel sorry for Mavic Chen. Because actually, they are so sort of deliberately cruel. And they let him do it. And they let him have it. And it's impassively. It just watches him. And it doesn't say a word. And it's brilliant because he takes the silence as being, yeah, you're frightened of me because I'm Mavic Chen. And everybody else, including the viewer, is going, oh, this is horrible. They're just not even saying anything to him. And he's giving the Dalek orders and it doesn't move. I think that's genius. I think that's really unsettling and really horrible. And it's difficult because there's a couple of things that could be my favourite. So I'm making a mental note here because I absolutely love this, because you know Chen's going to die. You know Chen's story is going to come to an end. And you're almost sort of disappointed at that prospect because he's been such a good figure. And there's not an awful lot you can do. There aren't many characters left. It's the Daleks, Chen, and the TARDIS regulars. So, that's on the menu for this episode. But you think, so what's he going to do? Is he going to ally himself with Stephen and Sarah? Sometimes that's what happens, isn't it? The baddie finds their conscience or dies doing one last moment of, they get their decency back just before they expire. What they do instead is they ignore him so completely, to take away all of his power, and then they just sort of go, don't even kill him in here. It's sort of like take him out the back and shoot him in the gutter kind of thing. It's utterly brilliant. It's so horribly fitting. I actually can't think, because he's been such a brilliant character. Kevin Stoney is so good. I was almost sort of prepared to sort of go, yeah, and of course, as I say, when he dies, I expect him to die. I expect him to die, and that's so far so predictable. But actually, and those moments can be a bit of a disappointment, but actually this is so thematically spot on, and it's so wretched. It's such ignominy for somebody that has spent the whole thing puffed up, and it's also brilliant for the Daleks because it shows them at their absolutely most sort of malevolent. They're squat and malevolent and vicious and waspish, and this is the only way that this could end. It's Chekhov's time destructor. You can't have this thing without it going off. So and the doctor's there and has had to set it off. He's had to pull the switch, and actually that makes that takes great advantage of or sort of justifies is the wrong word, but emphasises why his absence up until this point, from the beginning of episode 11, has been so important, because it's almost like he's abandoned the story until it's time to take it to the worst place it can possibly go, and only Doctor Who can do that. And he sort of called the story's bluff and gone, okay, you want a story with a time destructor? I'm gonna flick the switch. And I love the fact that now Chen's dead. The Dalek Supreme in this is a real character, and all it is it's a Dalek with a different paint job and a slightly different voice. But its important is such that it actually shows you don't necessarily need a Davros or an Emperor Dalek to have a Dalek that makes a real impact. You can just have a Dalek, but just give them the right things to do. And the Dalek Supreme in this I think is really, really effective, from its squawking at Chen to the fact that it leaves him in the cell last week to the fact that it completely ignores him this week. Oh, it's great. I'm loving these Daleks, and just in the same way that the coughing Dalek in the chase, or the one that's crap at maths in the chase, is you sort of go, what were you thinking? The fact is that there's never that thing of just going, well, they're just the guys that go exterminate and shoot people. There's always an attempt to try and sort of mix it up a bit and go, so what can we do with this? And some of them don't work. I don't think, much as I had fun with the chase, I don't think it does the Daleks any favours. This, however, they're really back to their absolute bad. And those things I said about, it's a bit of a shame that the way that they treat the delegates. But actually, again, if we were looking from that purely from a Dalek point of view, it's a great way of going, yeah, we've got all these fancy aliens and the Daleks have assembled, but they don't need any of them. And if they want to kill them, if they want to experiment on one of them, they want to summarily execute one of them, they will, and they can, and they're Daleks, and they won't think about the consequences. And almost all those questions I was asking about, and what happens back on the planet of Trantis or whatever, the Daleks don't give a flying monkeys. They just go, yeah, they could do what they want, and if they come and attack us, we'll kill them. We only need one Dalek to do it, kind of thing. And this is, I remember this being really effective when I listened to the soundtrack, and I think Hartnell is great in this, and Sarah's been with us for, she's undergone a real transformation from the monosyllabic curt sort of emotionless killing machine, who will do as she's ordered. She's almost sort of quite Dalek-like herself, isn't she? She does as she's told. She dispatches people without second thought. But through her encounter with the Doctor and with Stephen, we see the real person underneath. She sort of humanises to the extent that she's a mate of ours now. And keep going. I think anyone that sort of says keep going, don't wait for me. I'm a sucker for all of those. I actually was once playing Call of Duty with someone, and I was really struggling with the controls, and I kept getting hit in it. And I just went, "Oh, just leave me," which of course I couldn't do because it's a computer game. But it is a sort of a dramatic thing that happens when you're in states of great peril. If it's just too much, if you're too wounded or can't cope anymore, just go, keep going. And she says keep going, and it's a race. It's literally a race against time, this, isn't it? And the Doctor's holding death in his hands, and the sound is wonderful again. Let's go back to Brian Hodgson and listen to that wonderful wind, and poor old Stephen is kind of, he's been removed from the story and he's as helpless as we are, and actually that's really effective. We know that time is running out elsewhere, and it's almost like he's on the other side. He's Kirk on the other side of the glass from Spock, isn't he? He's kind of he bangs the control, and I bet Peter Purves did all of that very, very well, because he's really good at the intense, dramatic stuff. And it's not that the story doesn't know what to do with Stephen. Stephen is there, deliberately impotent. Time is standing still almost where Stephen is, in the safety of the TARDIS, and it's out of control everywhere else. And this is, I think they've very effectively in the recon used a bit of Hartnell with some of the web on him from the web planet to suggest that he's old. And we've got these brilliant pictures, haven't we, of Sarah on film aging into the actress May Warden, who is in that very famous. There's a thing that's shown on New Year's Eve in Germany every year, and I can't remember the name of it now. And it's a sort of comedy short from the UK, and the actress that is in it is May Warden, whose other claim to fame is that she's the uncredited old Sarah Kingdom in the Daleks Masterplan. She's also in an episode of Adam Adamant Lives, but it's a harrowing image as well, and they don't stint on it. If those photos that we've got that are so well used here are anything to believe, it's and you can imagine. Camfield would have filmed it well, and Hartnell's there, all covered in dust. The effects of the time winds, as it were, and she's really grimacing, May Warden, and you could hear, in Jean Marsh's performance as well, that we don't know where one stops and the other begins, but it seems to be pretty harrowing, and it's a great way of ending the story of not just the death of somebody, but a pretty visceral and unpleasant, and there's something about aging to death that is particularly cruel, and it sort of ties in with what I was talking about those colour photos from so long ago, and you think, that moment frozen in time, because we all age, but we age very, very slowly, so it's not as frightening. It's always a bit scary when you see pictures of yourself suddenly from 20 years ago. You see people you knew as young suddenly when they're old. It's suddenly, oh my God, that's a bit, oh blimey. But time is slightly kinder to us because it wears away at us incrementally. So to actually have it all condensed into a very short space of time, where the young, vital Sarah ages, does that thing that normally happens as a natural process so sort of quickly and devastatingly is brilliant. It's a genius way to end this with the stakes really high. And this is, Doctor Who in the 60s is often sort of quite quaint and often quite silly when it doesn't mean to be, but this is really, this is aiming high. This is aiming to be gut-wrenching. Quite often people die in Doctor Who, but it's just a bit like, it's just a sort of moment. It's just a sort of dramatic shorthand because people die in these sorts of program. This is designed to be harrowing, and I think from what we hear of the terrible, wretched noises that Hartnell makes as he sort of urges Stephen back, and he's obviously been through the mill. It's a brilliant performance from Hartnell. It's quite horrifying. And I think I think this is a performance from him I would really like to see. I think he's been excellent in this story actually. They realize Sarah's not there. No. And that's the really sort of touching thing. That's again the stuff of these sorts of dramas, but it's stuff I'm an absolute sucker for. It's not just that she died, it's that she went back for him and helped him, and it's that noble sacrifice thing that runs through Doctor Who as a thing that it's. I don't want to get too highfalutin about it, but actually the thing about self-sacrifice and doing the stuff that is not necessarily in your interests or about you is as appropriate a moment of storytelling now as at any time, because I think today's times are quite narcissistic, and you occasionally need a reminder that you're not the centre of the universe, as Sarah Kingdom realised that there was a lot more at stake than just her, and made the ultimate sacrifice. And that's terribly moving and inspiring, but also gut-wrenching, because she could have survived, or well, no, she couldn't have done. But it's the self-conscious act of sacrifice that is very moving, because it's to run into the storm is that that's a conscious act of sacrifice. And then we have the brilliant thing of the Daleks turning into embryos, which again gives a little sneak peek into the insides of the Dalek, which is always an exciting thing. But, this story ends with utter devastation, dust. And Hartnell is great. He's so wretched, and Stephen is so grim. It's brilliant. And I think it really earns the 12 episodes. No, they don't. They are rewarded. The 12 episodes that put in a lot of work to make an epic story that director Douglas Camfield has worked week in, week out for 3 months on the trot, let alone the pre-planning. I think it's really earned its place as an epic in Doctor Who's history. As I say, I've not been shy about making certain criticisms of it, but actually, when you take it as a whole and you get to these last 2 episodes, I think in particular, which really interesting, you don't go for the sort of big grandstanding with loads of characters and actually the sort of threat to Earth and everything is sort of off stage in a way. It's and this last episode, what the cast is the 3 regulars, Mavic Chen and the Daleks. And I think it's nice because often Doctor Who forgets somebody 2 episodes after they've died. The fact that Stephen goes not just Sarah but Brett, Katerina. It's a kind of it's a list of the dead. It's a list of what it's cost us to get here, where everything is reduced to dust. And it brilliantly, even though the next story is War of God, the massacre is dour and grim and brilliant. I love the massacre. It doesn't go, oh yeah, we need a cliffhanger to make people come back next week, as Doctor Who, was par for the course of Doctor Who of this time. Instead, it went, no, we stop now. There has been enough. Oh, special sound effects by the BBC Radiophonics Workshop. Special credit. There's a special credit too for production assistant Victor Retelis, who I know Douglas Camfield felt had done extra special work. I've interviewed Vic. He lives in Australia. One of the few people to work to Doctor Who and Home and Away. I know there's others, but he's one who directed Home and Away. Never directed Doctor Who, but did direct Blake Seven and Secret Army. But Vic is a spiky and interesting guy. I like him. I literally just sort of sent a message out of the blue to him. And to my surprise, got a yes and had a lovely Skype call. I didn't really know what I was doing when I was interviewing people then. I sort of when I think, I should really revisit Vic and chat to him again. But I had so few hours in the day. That was really good. That was really good. And I think, its payoff rose to the occasion. I think that's a brilliant episode of Doctor Who. I think those last 2 episodes are really special. So what am I going to I'm really torn. I'm feeling a bit Natalie and Bruglia. I think, was she in Home and Away? Or was she? No, I think she was Neighbours. But I think Natalie's there lying naked on the floor going, is it the way that the Daleks ignore a totally blank Mavic Chen, which I really think, because it's so unexpected, because it's so unusual, and yet it's so right. I love it. I could sing songs about that. But also, there is the destruction of time sequence, much of which we can only imagine, sure. But we know that Sarah's aging was done on film, so there's that's that they're going to have had the chance to make that really good. We know from the photos that May Warden, is looks like she's really struggling and is old, is visibly old. It's not, there's no crap makeup there or anything like that. It's just Sarah is reduced to being an old lady, and we know that Jean Marsh has to go through the mill prior to that, because we can discern that from the soundtrack, and Hartnell's reaction and that scream he gives, that wretched noise that he gives as he sort of urges Stephen back into the TARDIS. Hartnell's brilliant. Oh, and the fact that, it's the end of the story. They unleash the destruction of time and everything is left as just dust. It's a brilliant ending. It's so good. Oh, because of course I've got to do the bonus thing as well. But the bonus thing is not usually two things from the same episode. The bonus thing is usually a sort of overarching thing. And something like Douglas Camfield, who I think really deserves a nod for his work, for the sheer scale and ambition of what he does, and the fact that in those episodes that we've got, even by episode 10 when he must have been knackered, he's got that fade from the sun to the Daleks dome, that segue, that vision mixing, that he's still being so visually ambitious and clever. And I love the delegates. They're a thing too. Oh, so what am I going to choose? And should I play the game a little bit? Surely Ian will choose the destruction of time and the death of Sarah. I'm sure that terrified him as a child and has stayed with him. Oh, or should I just be true to my heart? I think the ending is great, but I keep being drawn to the Daleks just ignoring Mavic Chen and just taking him out, killing him, because I think that as I said, I said what I think it said about him and what it said about the Daleks. That's my thing from episode 12. But then I will also choose as my bonus thing the ending, which has the destruction of time, the death of Sarah, and just the way that it ends and the fact that it doesn't lead into the next story. So I hope by implication, Douglas Camfield takes credit for many of the things that I've chosen. But it just seems quite simplistic to choose the director. And I know there'll be times, I'm sure, when I choose Douglas Camfield again. And it doesn't really matter, does it? I'm there going, but history needs to record that. No, it doesn't. This is just nobody talking on a podcast. I don't need to worry about whether the keepers of the Douglas Camfield archival ledger in the great history of the universe notes whether Toby Hadoke's time travels gave him due credit. Nobody cares apart from me at this stage, because I'm sure you've lost the will to live by now as well. So, with a salute to Douglas Camfield, and various different hand gestures and ways of walking to the delegates, I'm going to choose for this episode the way that the Daleks ignore Mavic Chen, because it's brilliant. And then for the bonus thing, the end, the destruction of time, and just the culmination of the epic. What has Ian chosen?
And then we have the Doctor returning for episode 12. And the destruction of time. I remember watching that episode very much, and the scene there, which I would obviously that I remember but most, is Sarah Kingdom aging to death. I didn't realise that it was quite like Roger Haggard's She, but it was quite horrific. The Doctor was affected by the time destructor as well, and maybe that caused later on his regeneration, his first regeneration. But Sarah dying was a shock. She had more or less from killing her brother, which was shocking to start with, to becoming a real good companion. There was a good relationship between Stephen and Sarah. They could imagine they would be a team. They could go on to have more adventures, but it didn't happen that way. Sarah died, perhaps because she had killed her brother. It was inevitable that she had to die. She couldn't continue as one of the companions in a lead part. It was inevitable. But then after that, Sarah aging to death was the comment, "What a waste," said the Doctor. "What a terrible waste," which is a really good message. It's not really like some more recent episodes. They're making a really good point that war, or plotting war, or selfishness or greed, which was behind the Dalek Masterplan, was a waste. War is always a waste, a terrible waste. And it's not surprising that that was a story that was partly written by Terry Nation. So the cost, as Stephen said, Sarah, Katerina, Brett, all these deaths, these people he cared about, all had to die to stop the Daleks. So, either Sarah Kingdom aging to death, or the final statement from the Doctor, the cost of defeating the Daleks in the Daleks Masterplan. It's a Doctor Who story which has everything. It's got adventure, it's got scares, it's got thrills, it's got excitement, it's got a little bit of comedy as well. Takes you to unusual places. And it ends not from the way it started, because there's just the Doctor and Stephen now at the end of Masterplan. And there is no other companions. And it was a few episodes on that they had another companion, who was Dodo. But she didn't last long, sadly, as well. So, season 3 of Doctor Who, brilliant in every way.
Yeah, and I've got another video from Ian, because I know he forgot to do the bonus, so that's on another video. But so while I find that, I will concur. I think season 3 of Doctor Who is brilliant. I know John Wiles was not an easy fit for Doctor Who, but actually I think the darkness, and I mean there's comedy in Wiles Who as well, and it's of the Donald Cotton variety, which I adore. But the ambition that it has to sort of play with the sort of philosophical aspects of the show, and to tell sort of quite gutsy stories, is I think undervalued, because you know the way that we tell the story of season 3 is that it's tonally a bit all over the shop, and we know that Wiles didn't like Hartnell and vice versa, but I actually think that the stories are ambitious, occasionally dour, but definitely moving and gutsy, and they're very emotional at times. And I've loved watching the Daleks Masterplan as 12 episodes. I was quite disappointed when I first saw episodes 5 and 10, because viewed sort of on their own, they aren't one especially representative, until you don't get it in context. I so envy Ian, because when I came to the Daleks Masterplan, Katerina and Sarah were dead. When Ian came to the Daleks Masterplan, Katerina had only just joined, and you'd never met Sarah. And as he said there, you met her and she killed her brother, and then you got to know her, and that sort of lulls you into okay, well she's thawed and she's become a friend of ours, and we've almost forgotten that she killed her brother. And now she's dead. And yeah, that line of the Doctor's at the end, what a waste, was wonderful. And what's been a real joy for me of this is because it's been such a long one. I've been posting up on my Patreon the earlier episodes before recording these, and it's been such a joy that the people on Patreon have been sort of commenting so favourably on Ian's contribution, that what a valuable insight it is from these earliest of fans, giving us their memories of what it was like watching these stories at the time, before we knew that Doctor Who was a Time Lord, before there was colour, before Doctor Who was more than 4 years old. And I envy Ian. I mean, I loved the way that I discovered Doctor Who piecemeal, and I remember when I first discovered about the Daleks Masterplan, I was reading about this 12-part amazing epic, with a prologue and 2 companions die in it, and that was thrilling reading about all of those and imagining them and hopefully getting to see them one day. And I still have that desire. I've still discovered it piecemeal, a couple of episodes, a couple of episodes, then some clips from missing episodes, and then a missing episode turning up, and then listening to the soundtrack. Or did I listen to the soundtrack first? But do you know what I mean? And still there's a chance that some more footage might turn up, or an episode might turn up, or there'll be photos of the delegates, say even from episode 3, where we don't even know. I'm guessing now from what I've sort of dug around watching this now, and I think my assumptions are correct, but that hadn't occurred to me before I started doing this. So that archaeological joy is great, and it fills me with zeal, and it provokes me and makes me excited, and I love that discovery. But I also know that I slightly missed out by not being born 12, 13 years old. Would I exchange it for being a bit older? Who knows? And those are the games that time plays. Oh, the destructiveness of time. So what's Ian chosen for his bonus? Oh, this is an 8-minute video. What's he got to say for himself?
Hello, I'm Ian McLachlan.
And
I have been a fan of Doctor Who.
No, okay. So what he's doing is he's doing a recap for me because he felt he'd gone on too long. Well, no, and he's given me a shorter alternative. However, what's his bonus thing?
And what overall would I say? Well, it could be that it was unexpected deaths on it, but I would say that what I particularly liked and was special was William Hartnell's performance. In that story, as in all stories, he was absolutely brilliant. He played an alien you could imagine was an alien. He had various, you could say, faces. Sometimes he was kind, sometimes he was charming, sometimes he was very angry with the scene with Brett. He could be lots of things, but you knew there was lots of mystery to him. And the mystery of Doctor Who is something that I wish they had kept.
Oh, Ian, and like a Doctor Who fan, he can't leave it without just having a little dig at the later manifestations of the show, because that's the beauty of being a Doctor Who fan, is you can always celebrate what you love about it, but you always also need to make the point of what you don't like about it too. I've adored Ian's contribution. So his bonus thing, and I was looking at an all-encompassing thing, probably as a more likely thing of the bonus, and I should have guessed that he would choose Hartnell, and rightly so. Hartnell's excellent in the story, and I do like his idea as well that he suggested that actually, because Hartnell gets less and less to do pretty much as his era proceeds from here, that he's been a bit, his body has been worn a bit thin by the Time Destructor, and that's why you can sort of buy that if you want to tell the story of Doctor Who on a broad canvas, because he's never quite the same again. He's always needing a rest or a day off or an episode lying down. I've loved Ian's contribution. I hope he enjoyed doing it. He certainly did it with zeal. I mean, he's given me nearly 40 minutes worth of recorded material, because what happened there with that where he gives his bonus of the Hartnell is he's given me a sort of a truncated version of his likes for each episode, in case I just wanted brief excerpts of. But no, I much prefer having the whole thing. So thanks to Ian. You see, we learn wisdom from the elders of our tribe. and he's a smart guy, isn't he, and insightful. And he's what I've got from listening to him is like the idea of the Doctor, being weakened by the time destruct from here on in. His Ian's observations about the Doctor being absent, being less is more. Things like he gives me a fresh perspective on. I knew I didn't know this story particularly well, but I kind of knew it enough to know what happens in each episode, sort of blow by blow. But actually my perspectives on that have really benefited from his observations, and his observations that come from a slightly different angle and from a slightly different set of circumstances by which the story was introduced to him and under which he appreciated it. Now, we can both watch it now and watch exactly the same renditions of it now, but we come to it from having had different stimuli and different, and our first exposure to it was different, which means it will never quite be the same for both of us, which is why Doctor Who will never quite be the same, even though we're united by our love, all of us, for this strange show, and we all obviously have a penchant for adventure and humour and imagination and fun. We are made up of so many different things, and Doctor Who is tied up so much with our childhood and how we discovered it first, and then how we not only discovered it, but then what led us to delve so much deeper into it, because we don't just watch Doctor Who. If you're listening to this, you don't watch Doctor Who. You don't just watch Doctor Who. You love Doctor Who so much, you'll listen to a tedious old goat wanging on and giving you facts about... I'm the tedious old goat, not Ian. Facts about, uncredited actors and theories about what the two listed extras in episode 3 are doing and why they might not be doing what it says on a piece of paper that somebody uncovered once and somebody else interpreted another time, but so we all love this show and are interested in this show, and so we will have commonalities. Everyone I know likes Doctor Who is somebody that has a great zeal for minutiae. A lot of people I know, found themselves lost at various times, or misunderstood, or have a brain that's not quite equipped to deal with some of the things that everybody else takes in their stride, and yet a brain that then can deal with other stuff in quite interesting ways. And we're people who are prone to be, I think, and I speak for myself here, sometimes a bit too set in my ways about how I see some things, deeply tedious about others, massively pedantic about others, but it all comes from a love and an interest, and I love Ian's absolute joy, but I noticed that he couldn't resist going, but actually this is my second favourite story because I prefer the Keys of Marinus, and I love the mystery that Doctor Who had, which I wish it had now. We can't help ourselves, and that's not to demean Ian doing that, because that's exactly how I behave about things in the world. I'm never too far away from knocking that half full glass over so that it's so that the emptiness is there for all to see. I'm so pleased I asked Ian. I've only met him on a small number of occasions, but we wouldn't be here without people like him, and our understanding of the show would not be the same. And I feel that my understanding of this particular show has been enhanced by his presence throughout the course of these 12 episodes. God love him. Well, thanks to Ian K. McLachlan, one of the earliest Doctor Who fans, for taking us on that guided tour on the Daleks Masterplan. An epic, which I've really enjoyed. As I say, even though the journey I've sometimes gone, but actually doing the whole thing as God, Terry Nation, intended. You get to that payoff, and it's not a waste. Oh, it's not a waste. It's a really good use of your time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that, and I hope that you have too. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I was really daunted by doing something that was so recon heavy, and a story that that comparatively I've experienced comparatively less than some of the others. But I'm glad I did that. I hope you enjoyed joining me on the journey. And that you don't feel... and that you don't feel like listening to me has made you age to death. Happy times and places, people. Happy times and places. Ta-ta. Well, thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest for the whole of the Daleks Masterplan was the mighty, uber early fan, Ian K. McLachlan. Thanks to him, and to the various patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Stephen White, Andrew Wilson, Andrew Willis, Michael Williams, Rich Wiggins, Adam Westwood, Gary Wales, Apollo C. Vermouth, David Trainier, Reynard Toombs, Nick Temple, Neil Tate, Len Stewart, Keith Say, Matt Sawyer, Jim Sangster, John Rivers, Dylan Rees, Richie, Kevin Parker, Jonathan Potter, Keith Pirrie, Melvin Pena, Dave Owen, Matthew Newton, Nathan Moore, Stuart Mitchell, Rossa McPhillips, John McClay, David Matthewman, Nathan Martin, Gavin McLean, James Lark, Guy Lambert, Clive Lewis, and Ashley Knight. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And if you too would like to be a patron, please go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. What can you get there? Oh my goodness. Advance releases, bonus material, exclusive chit-chat, and pictures of my dog, which I sort of put up as a sort of joke, just so there was something that would go up on a Tuesday. And I think they might actually be more popular than anything involving me. So there we go. Patreon is a monthly subscription service, and you can pay, as I say, as little as £3 a month. If you sign up for a year, you get a 10% discount on even that. But look, I know that times are tough, and I know that not everybody can afford to pay for what is essentially free streaming stuff. So I'm very, very grateful to those people who do. I do not have a remotest problem with anybody that listens to this and doesn't. I am just grateful to you for the fact that you listen to this stuff. So look, I'll tell you what's free. Going to iTunes or to wherever you get your podcasts, or even just on Facebook and Twitter, and saying nice things about this. But on iTunes, if you give these 5 stars and some lines of review, that actually improves the algorithms and makes this sort of stand out from the crowd a little bit. And it's just helpful, because when you put this much effort into something, it's nice to know that people are listening, especially if people are enjoying it. And thanks to all of you who fed back to say that you are. If you are able to throw some cash my way and don't want to do the monthly thing, go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke for a one-off donation. I really don't like doing all of that stuff. It does sound very sort of graspy, does it? But I'm an entertainer. I know the evidence is scant, but I have to sing for my supper, and I can't sing, so I have to talk about Doctor Who for my supper, and I can do that. Whether I do it to any value or not, well, that's the beauty of the modern model, isn't it? Because you can ascribe value to it at Patreon or Ko-fi. And I'll tell you what, if you do like the cut of my jib, I talk about other stuff that isn't Doctor Who, especially in my day job as a stand-up comedian, where I appear every Tuesday night at Excess Malarkey Comedy Club in Manchester, which I've emceed every Tuesday for the past 24 years. It will be 25 in September 2022. That means we must be doing something right. And we're also online at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey on the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. for free. I'm doing this on a Saturday night. What else have you been doing with your Saturday night, Toby, seeing as it's now 1:15 in the morning? Well, I'll tell you what I've been doing with my Saturday night, because it's not all just about doing these blooming podcasts, is it? From the Patreon page and all of that, and iTunes. I've been recording another Doctor Who podcast for somebody else. I've been a guest on a wheezing, groaning sound whose edition will probably be out on iTunes well before this episode is. So delve back into the past if you want to hear me talking about the Rebos operation on the wheezing, groaning sound with the fabulous comedian, writer, performers Tom Neenan, Paul Litchfield and John Rain, who do a lovely podcast. It's ruder than this one, and sometimes it's not exactly celebrating what they're watching. They have interesting taste. They gave Planet of the Spiders a very easy ride, I thought, and were unnecessarily mean about the greatest show in the galaxy. But wouldn't it be boring if we all had the same opinion? And their opinions are always very amusingly put. It's called a wheezing, groaning sound. It's, as I say, much more irreverent than what I do here, but that's it's meant to be. And they're very, very funny guys. I know deep down they love Doctor Who, but they're not afraid to take the mickey. So I've kept them in order just a little bit doing the Rebus operation tonight, and I had a whale of a time. Hopefully they'll edit down my waffle and make me sound at least reasonable. But however bad I am, their contributions are always funny and cheeky. And if you've not checked out that podcast, well, do. A wheezing, groaning sound.